I'm Shahar Azani with a special report for JBS from Ben Gurion International Airport in Israel. As Russia's war against the Ukraine continues and the humanitarian situation on the ground in the Ukraine worsens on a minute-by-minute basis, the state of Israel does not remain indifferent. From a decision to absorb refugees to sending hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid, Israel has also dispatched groups of Israeli diplomats from the foreign ministry to assist with efforts on the ground to alleviate some of the immense difficulties. To dive deeper into the situation and Israel's actions, it is a great pleasure to have with us Galit Peleg. Galit is Director of International Projects and Humanitarian Aid at Israel's international aid agency, Mashav. Galit, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Shahar, for having me.
First, what is Mashav? What do you do?
Well, Mashav is the aid agency of Israel. It's the national agency that sits in the foreign ministry, and its aim is mainly to build capacities. It was established in the 60s, at first with Golda Meir. Actually, Golda Meir was a foreign minister, and she initiated this. But it was this activity. But this idea of assisting and sharing knowledge with other countries came both from Ben Gurion, who was the prime minister, and Golda Meir. Israel back then was still a developing country, but already sharing knowledge. You said that the idea was everything that we learn, we will share. And today, so it started with mainly agriculture. Today, I don't think there is an area or a sector that Mashav is not involved in, and we're working all over the world, building capacities in agriculture, of course, but also in medicine, finance, innovation, education, whatever you can think of.
You know, Golda Meir, in the Israeli memory at least, is remembered as prime minister, and specifically as the prime minister of the Yom Kippur War. And you are telling us a different story. In addition,
yes,
that in the course of her term as foreign minister, she initiated this operation. And here was Golda Meir, a woman leader, who before even becoming prime minister already built this incredible strategic vision. And here you are, an Israeli diplomat, a woman who does this immense work continuously. And I have to say, it's really impressive. In one of the reports I've seen of the Israeli teams on the ground, many of the Israeli diplomats right there were women.
It's true. First of all, I think today we came to a point that we have at least 50% women. We have the number of of ambassadors, women ambassadors increased, and also heads of division. So I wouldn't say we are in the best place, but I think that we are getting there. The current minister also came with this vision that he would like to see 50% of each senior position taken by women.
You know, in the course of this, Women's Month, International Women's Month, I think it's important to note where Israel is. You mentioned Mashav's work on the field of humanitarian aid. So let's dive quickly into what's happening now in the Ukraine as far as what is Israel doing? What is it hoping to achieve? What does it look like from the inside?
Look, the minute that we saw the horrible pictures coming from the Ukraine, I think everybody in Israel knew that we cannot just turn a blind eye. And we cannot just sit and write posts on Facebook.
I just want to stop you there for a minute. You're correct. In the situation today is many people feel, to our detriment, that action means posting and being active on social media, which is great. It's important to, enlighten and share information, but there is so much more that needs to be done.
Right. So in this sense, first of all, officially, the state, through Mashav, by the way, sent last week, we sent 3 planes with 100 tons of medical equipment, and also, just things like coats, thermal blankets, gloves, socks, so that people immediately will get this first aid, not only in terms of medical assistance, but also in things that you need as a refugee. The second thing, this was official. You talked about the foreign ministry. I have to say that the spirit of volunteering is quite amazing. People volunteered to go to be posted on the borders, and the first aim was to rescue as many Israelis as possible. But then
you're saying volunteered. You're talking diplomats.
No, they were posted. The volunteering thing is that nobody had to get an order to go. They said we need people to go to the border of Ukraine with Moldova or Poland or Romania, and immediately you had more than 100 volunteers that are standing there since 2 weeks ago. Director General gave an explicit order to replace them, because it's really, it's very difficult also mentally to stand there and to work with the refugees, and they refuse to be replaced. And then there are more people that are volunteering all the time, and they want to go there, and they're just standing there. They're helping. At first they helped Israelis and Jews, and now they're helping everybody. And so to hand over some things that they need immediately, but also to answer questions, to calm down, to see that kids are treated well. We sent some money to these people, so that to our people, so that they can buy first equipment. How you say, it's not first aid, like I said, because
right.
It's not medical. So they bought beds and mattresses and blankets, so people can sleep the first night outside of their house or their home. They're not sleeping in the street. And I have to say that in the ministry, the volunteering spirit is quite amazing.
I just have this image in my mind of Israeli teams right there on the ground, and it takes me to something I read recently about Natan Sharansky, the former head of the Jewish Agency, who said in a recent event about the meaning of what it means to be Jewish, and the actual Jewish reference, where in the past it used to be to your detriment, where being a Jew meant you're out of school and out of job, and today we see the representatives of the Jewish state standing there assisting people, where being Jewish sometimes means being rescued and being assisted and being a beacon of great light for all of these refugees in this terrible situation.
So I think as an Israeli, if you become a refugee and you get to the border, and then you see these angels just picking you out from the line and telling you, come with us, in Hebrew, and they take you with them. This is one thing. You have Jews there that, 80 years ago, there was exactly what Sharansky said, but 80 years ago, refugees were standing there and nobody wanted them because they were Jews. Now the Jews are the only ones that know where to go, because Israel is telling them, if you're Jewish, you can come to Israel. And it's really irony in history. And it is a miracle. That's why, if anybody ever thought, why do we need the Jewish state? I think we're getting an answer here.
Israel doesn't share a border with the Ukraine. I'm not sure that it would be, natural for any country to send, so many teams and so much humanitarian aid supply. Why do you think, in the DNA of it, why does Israel do it? And you and I know what Mashav does continuously, but also in times of emergency, it seems that Israelis, and specifically the Israeli Foreign Ministry and the incredible Israeli diplomats, always hop on a plane, where there is a tsunami or earthquake or, what we're seeing now, the wartime. What is it about the Israeli Foreign Ministry's DNA in this regard?
In the last 9 months that I've been in this job, I can't remember how many events we had of this special emergency aid. Like you said, tsunami, hurricanes, big explosions and fires. And we immediately send this assistance because this is, I think it comes out of this thought that when we needed, nobody was there for us. So we have to change it. I think it's coming also from this concept of tikkun olam, that we are here in order to change the world, to repair it for the better. Now, in this case of Ukraine, you said so much stuff and so many people on the ground. I think this is exactly the picture that people have in their minds when they see these pictures of refugees, and they think what I said before, that 80 years ago it was us. I think about it, the city of Lviv, or like Ukrainians call it Lviv. My grandmother comes from Lviv.
Wow.
She was an only survivor for my family. And now Lviv has become a safe haven for refugees, Jews included, but not only that. Let me tell you a story. I just saw a testimonial on TV of this Canadian hockey player from Ukrainian origin. He went to visit his family in Ukraine, and he was caught in the middle of the fire. He said he woke up in Kiev, I think, and he heard these bombs from one side the Russians, the other side Ukraine, and he called his embassy, the Canadian embassy, and he said nobody answered. So he sent them an email, and he got this generic email, you have to just to cross the border. So he said, well, I'm Jewish, I'll call the Israeli embassy. He called the Israeli embassy. They told him come to Lviv. When he came to Lviv, they took him on a bus. They put him on a bus, they helped him, they asked him, do you need something? Then they took him to the border. Then they asked him, where do you continue from here? Then I don't think that there are other embassies there that are working like that. To think that, you think what happened 8 years ago and today, and you compare it and say, if today we have a state, we will help all our people, but we will help also others that in another case didn't help us, because this is who we are.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
We're talking about Israel's efforts on the ground. We also know that the government of Israel decided to absorb thousands of refugees in Israel, regardless of being Jewish.
Right. Well, this is again this DNA. I mean, you have a crisis. I don't know if all these refugees would like to stay in Israel. Nobody knows that. By the way, there are also Russian Jews that are making Aliyah now because they don't feel very comfortable.
In Russia?
In Russia, yes. So Israel is absorbing not only thousands of Ukrainians, but also Russians. But in terms of non-Jews refugees, again, I think that there is an understanding that Israel is not a very big country. It's not a very rich country. It's not an immediate neighbor of Ukraine.
Right.
But we do what we have to do as human beings.
We also know about Prime Minister Bennett's trip to Moscow, the calls with Zelensky from the Ukraine, the trip to Berlin. It seems that Israel is taking a role of a mediator in this crisis.
Yes. Look, Israel is in a very specific or special situation in the opposition in this crisis. We heard, some comments. Why doesn't Israel does this? Why doesn't Israel does this, that? And the truth is that we have a crisis here with two friendly countries to Israel, with two countries that Israel has interests to maintain good relations. And in this time of crisis, it becomes a very great advantage, because Israel is maybe one of the only countries currently that can approach both leaders and will be listened to. And if we can, because at first people said, what, Israel will be the mediator between these two giants?
Right.
But yes, if you have relations with both of them, if you are in a position that, like I said, that both of them are willing to listen to you, it is a very good opportunity to try to bring an end. Everybody wants to bring an end to this crisis.
Right.
So Israel takes this opportunity really to try to do something that maybe others are unable to do.
So, for those of our viewers who are not familiar with, the geopolitical realities of our region, Russia has some presence in our area. So maybe you can say a few words about that situation between Israel and Russia and how it pertains to what's happening right here on the borders of Israel.
Look, Russia has always been an active actor in the region. Right now, it has a lot of influence on countries that are neighbors bordering Israel, but not necessarily having diplomatic relations with, such as Lebanon or Syria, with the presence of countries with the presence of Hezbollah and a proxy of Iran that threatens Israel's security. So Israel would like to maintain this understanding with Russia that it doesn't block any activity of Israel vis-a-vis these terror organizations in these countries. And that is why we have to maintain good relations.
Right. So Israel maintains some caution, and as you said before, it has an open channel to both leaders and using those skills in order to mediate.
Yeah, also we have to remember that we have a lot of Israelis of Russian origin, so the relations the relations exist in so many levels and so many aspects that we cannot neglect that. Of course, that from the emotional point of view, you see the activity of Israel in terms of humanitarian aid towards Ukraine. But in terms of international relations, Israel has to find some kind of, I wouldn't say balance, but some kind of a middle way to deal with both countries.
Galit, I'm sorry. I have to tell you, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because I'm listening to you talking about Mashav and Israel's international aid for decades and Israel's continuous work, not just in times of emergency. And even now, the pioneering spirit of bottom-up, nobody forced diplomats. They're asking for volunteers and people rush there because they want to help. And Israel maintains a presence on the border, even though we're far away from where the war is taking place. What's happening in the sphere of international public opinion? And the reason I'm asking you specifically is we all know that in your past position, immediate past position, you were consul for public diplomacy at Israel's Consulate General in New York. You have seen that reality on the ground. First of all, why do you think there is such blindness to that side of Israel? Why doesn't it appear? Why don't people know more about Israel's actions in this regard? And what do you think could be done using this crisis to maybe send that message onwards?
We're trying to expose it as much as possible on social media, on classical media. But the thing is that I think the media and also people, that's very natural, they live according to their scenario that they are used to. It's very difficult to change opinions. So even people that are not anti-Israeli, they don't think of Israel in this field of humanitarian aid.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'm amazed because you have so much activity, not even connected to this crisis, in Mashav, in Africa, in South America.
Right.
But when you talk about Israel, so they think of different context, and they don't see, even if it's in front of them, they don't think, okay, so maybe this is unique. I think that the more we will expose, the more we will tell people, the more people will take part of it, the more they will know about it, and they know that Israel is very active in this field of humanitarian aid.
It even has another layer here, because in terms of diplomacy, people are used to games of give and take, right? You do this for this, you do that for that. And in this case of Israel, as you describe it, nobody rushes to the Ukraine or to any other situation of emergency, not to mention the continuous, arduous work that's being done with Israeli experts and Mashav all over the world that doesn't get any coverage, with the thinking of, I'm going to do this for them, and then they're going to do that for me. Israel just does it because it feels it needs to be done.
I'll tell you even more. In many crises, we find that the first minute something happens, so everybody rushes there, countries, NGOs, and they give like a first aid, and then they disappear. And Israel continues to stay there and to take care of the trauma, to take care of, like I said, capacity building. Let me give you an example. 3 months ago,
Sure.
there was a flood in an island next to New Zealand, in Tonga. So people thought, okay, so, well, we have to save the people, and we were sitting in Mashav, started to think how we will go there in 3 months or 6 months to build their the system of drinking water, so that the people in this island of Tonga will be able to drink not just after the event, but so that next time, if there will be a flood, their drinking water won't be harmed. And it exists in so many places that I see.
No, just a sec. Just in case our viewers missed this, you're talking about an island off of the shores of New Zealand.
Yes.
Not necessarily a place that shares a border with Israel. And you sit here in Jerusalem,
Yes.
at Mashav, at the Foreign Ministry of the State of Israel, to discuss what can be done long term
Yes.
to assist that small island so that it averts a similar crisis in the future?
Actually, we were sitting in
It's that DNA again.
we were sitting in Jerusalem, consulting with our water expert who sits in India at the moment, because he's building capacity of water facilities in India, and I was consulting with him how to help this island in New Zealand, yes, next to New Zealand.
Talk about the DNA of the Jewish state. This is really impressive.
Yes.
And I think that what Galit just mentioned is relevant for all of you viewers and everybody who cares not just about Israel, but about the truth, to try and spread that light and share that information with the world, because it's not only in means of knowledge, but also in terms of inspiration. That spirit of pioneering and willingness to assist. If more of us had more of that, I think that we would see less people in need all over the world. Galit, I want to ask you something on a personal note. You have been recently appointed as Israel's ambassador to
Albania and Bosnia.
Amazing. And you're going to leave this summer, right?
Yes.
What are your thoughts? How is your experience within Mashav will shape your agenda as an ambassador to be, but also as a senior woman Israeli diplomat who has been roaming the world for quite so many years doing this work for Israel and for the global community?
It's a good question. It will be my first time as ambassador, and I'm going to a region that I like very much, because I served first in Serbia many years ago. Now I'm coming back to the other side of the Balkans, and there's a lot to do.
Specifically, I think with Albania, there was a recent case where they renamed the street where the Russian embassy is to the Free Ukraine Street.
Oh, okay.
And in response, I think the Albanian consulate somewhere in the Ukraine was torched or something.
You know what attracted me, and it's very much connected to your question, what attracted me to apply to go to Albania was that it's a relative, it's not a young country, but it was, for many years it was under a very strict communist closed regime, and now it is trying to catch up, and there's a lot of will there, and there are a lot of similarities to how Israel was like 70 years ago, and people are willing to learn and to improve and to innovate, and Israel has so much to share that it gives me a great motivation to go there and to see what are the needs, what do you want to do, and to immediately share with our experience, and to enable the younger generation to really catch up with the Western world, and to become a successful country.
You know, you're mentioning innovation, and Israel is well known as the startup nation. I'm just wondering, from within the belly of the beast, as they say, within Mashav, how does innovation play a part in Israel's development aid policies and actions on the ground? And how does it play a part, for instance, on the border of the Ukraine now?
So, first, so maybe I'll start from the end.
Right.
On the border of Ukraine, there are a lot of Israelis that are, first I have to say that besides the work that the foreign ministry is doing in Ukraine or around Ukraine, we opened a center for to try to make some sense in all the phone calls that we get, the people that are willing to donate, and with the needs that we get.
Oh, so matching the donors.
Yes, matching donors to
the needs.
To the needs, and there are from time to time we get people that are saying, "Look, I have this. I'll tell you, we have this new app that can really improve." Now you say a refugee he needs an app, but there are things that can really make a shortcut in improving the life even of a refugee. I can give you an example from this hospital. We didn't talk about the hospital that Israel is the field hospital that Israel is going to build in the territory of Ukraine. So this company came with an app that they're selling to hospitals, but here they gave it for free. That every patient can download to his phone, and whatever he needs, if it's a nurse, if it's a towel, he can just push the button and it will go immediately to the person that needs to bring it to his bed. And can you imagine a field hospital?
Right.
The most innovative one with this top technology. Now, you asked about Mashav. So one of the seminars that we do, one of the trainings that we do is also innovation. We have a center in Haifa that is named after Golda Meir.
Right, the Mount Carmel Training Center.
Yes, Golda Meir, Mount Carmel. They concentrate on empowering women and innovation. So we have groups coming from different countries, and they learn, they're being trained. Or it can be innovation in education, it can be innovation in agriculture, but also how to think and how to encourage innovation. So we do that also in the training. And of course, we have very innovative things that we use when we build capacities in other countries. So I can give you a million examples in agriculture and education, in medicine, but I don't think we will have 3 hours for that.
Tiny country, huge shoulders. Thank you so much, Galit. This has been more than inspirational. And thank you, our viewers, for your time. And the information that we have received today is not only in terms of knowledge, but mainly in terms of empowerment and inspiration. The need and the desire of people to help one another stands at the foundation of resolving international conflicts. Remember, it all starts with the individual, and whatever it is that we expect our countries and our governments to do, we should uphold ourselves to the same standards with the same spirit of devotion for the rest. This is Shahar Azani for JBS on this special broadcast from Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport, wishing all of us a great day, and may we see better times and an end to this horrendous conflict in the Ukraine. Thank you.